Welcome. Welcome all vibrational angels and frequenciers, truth seekers, tone seekers. Good to have you with us again. This is Wayne Perry, certified sound therapist, coming at you from the Sound Therapy Center of Los Angeles, which I try to do every Saturday with you at around 6 p.m. and currently it's Friday around 8:45 or so p.m. Pacific Coast time, and I just thought I try to come in on Friday when I have the time to give you a little preview, answer any questions that you might have regarding sound therapy, vocal harmonics, vibrational healing, diagnostic and therapeutic sound therapy, which I've been doing for 28 years here at the Sound Therapy Center of Los Angeles. And so here we like to have fun with sound, and we don't really spend much time with external instruments. I started doing this work, as I've mentioned in previous videos, 28 years ago with sound machines. And I was trained and certified in sound machines and bioacoustics, which is the study of the frequencies that emanate from living organisms. And it's been an exciting career. It was really tough in the beginning. Back 28 years ago, people would just laugh and say, yeah, your sound or your recordings or treatments are really going to help my arthritis or my tumor or whatever they had going on. So it was pretty challenging until I got rolling, so to speak, with traveling the country and speaking at a lot of health and wellness conferences as a keynote speaker, and I was able to educate people more about how sound therapy works, and that's why I do these Facebook Live videos to try to answer any questions that you have. So if you have any questions, feel free to post them here, because it's a huge subject. I could talk for hours, probably for days, about all the principles and exercises and benefits, a lot of which is in my book, Sound Medicine, which you can peruse or get on my website, wayneperry.com. But those of you that aren't familiar with the book, in fact, I guess there's the book right behind me, Sound Medicine. And it's the only book that I'm aware of that teaches you sound healing. I know back in the day when I first came on the scene with this work 28 years ago, I had done research trying to get away from using sound machines, because I was privy to some stories, on the East Coast where people had some really scary stuff happen, because sound machines can be very dangerous if you get the wrong frequency. Same thing with sound baths, or anybody that's calling themselves a sound healer and is not certified and is not doing a diagnostic brain voice sound analysis before any treatments. You have to be specific with sound therapy and know the person and know exactly where they're weak vibrationally, where they're strong vibrationally, and also where they're in excess, where they have backed up frequencies that cause blockages in the body. These blockages and deficiencies in sound cause chronic health issues on the physical and emotional level. Usually they start on the emotional level, and if they're not addressed and corrected on the emotional level, then they ramp up to the physical level, and we start having physical issues and physical things start breaking down. Hi, Varun. Thanks for joining us. I hope I'm pronouncing your name properly. It's nice to have you with us. If you have any questions, please post them, because I'm happy to respond to any comments or questions. Like I said, it's a big topic. I do workshops on brainwave entrainment, on sound relationships. We did a few weeks ago in the weekend webinar workshop. We do workshops on detoxing the body-mind, chakra chanting and toning, vocal harmonics and overtoning, which is the secret to regenerative sound. I no longer work with the external instruments, as I started to say earlier. I started off with sound machines, and then I would kind of supplement it with some of the bowls and tuning forks and gongs and shakers and things of that nature, until I found some research that showed the way sound affects the body, and the way it affects the body the most profoundly. And it was clear from the research that the most powerful sound that affect the body the most profoundly was simply the multiples, harmonics, and overtones within the human voice. There wasn't another sound on the planet that could compare with the efficacy and the strength of empowering the body and the healing mechanisms than the human voice. A distant second that was only about a third as effective as the harmonics in the human voice was acoustic instruments. That was even better than the sound machine that I invested over $4,000 in. And but the problem with acoustic instruments, first of all, they're not natural like the human voice. Is the only instrument that's really connected to the body, is within the body and connected to spirit, connected literally to the soul. So it's the most natural and powerful instrument by far. And the research showed this. There wasn't anything that even came close. But the distant second of acoustic instruments can be effective if you know what your specific frequency pattern is, and you can change it or you can supplement it with sound properly, because you've identified it with a diagnostic brain-voice sound analysis. This is something I do almost every day, because now I'm doing it over the phone internationally with my clients and patients that I have in Europe and in Asia. And so thanks to Facebook Messenger and WhatsApp and Skype and all these other things, we have international interaction. Even with this pandemic that's shut a lot of people down, a lot of businesses down, and people being confined to their homes, we don't have to be confined, because we have, of course, the internet, and we have these things like Zoom, where we can do webinars and workshops and things online, so people don't have to leave their house. And I've had people, over the last 25 years or more, travel here to Los Angeles to do my weekend intensive sound healing training workshop, which is all weekend. And people have flown not only in the United States. I've had people from St. Louis, Seattle, Atlanta, Austin, Texas, Chicago, New York City, Philadelphia, not only in the United States, but have they flown here for the workshop, because I'm really the only one who does what I do, in both diagnostic and therapeutic sound therapy. But I've had many people, particularly the last 5 years, coming from Europe and Asia. So I've had people flying here from South Africa, Taiwan, China, Japan, Tokyo, New Zealand, and Australia to do my workshops. And I used to tell people, when I started doing diagnostic sound analysis over the phone, I would say, when they called me, that was before we had Facebook Messenger and WhatsApp, maybe 15 years ago. And I would tell them, this is going to be an expensive phone call. There's no way you can come to Los Angeles. And they would just say, well, this might be an expensive call, but it's a lot cheaper than taking an air flight and paying for airfare and a hotel and possibly even a rental car. So I can't argue with that. They're certainly correct. And so online is certainly working out quite well of late now. And I guess it took the pandemic to get me motivated to do this online. I've been thinking about it for 4 or 5 years, and I've just been, so busy, and then traveling. I've done sound healing tours of Europe, England, Italy, Bulgaria. I did a sound healing concert tour of Bulgaria a few years ago, and added a workshop tour to it. But then I've been called to Asia the last 2 or 3 years. I've been going to Taiwan and Hong Kong and Shanghai, And my business partner in Taiwan has set up my workshops and private sessions in Shanghai, Shenzhen, Hong Kong, as well as a workshop we did last year on Yanming Mountain in Taipei, Taiwan. And I love it there. The people are wonderful, particularly in Taiwan. They're very open-minded and open-hearted, and they really love the work. And since my book was published 2 years ago, it's been flying off the shelves there. And I'm happy to say, that people are responding well. I mean, this is international work. Sound needs no language. It doesn't matter what language people speak. Once they discover sound, it generally changes, transforms their life. Hi, Mary, who joined us. Welcome to the Secrets to Sound Therapy live, Facebook Live. I don't see any questions yet. Please post your questions, and the little chat box should be on the right of your screen because, like I said, it's such a huge topic. I could talk about, brainwave entrainment, diagnostic sound analysis, different therapeutic modalities, so many things that we address in the weekend, Saturday night, weekend webinar workshops. And so one of the things I wanted to announce tonight was to give everyone a heads up that tomorrow will be the last webinar workshop at 7 p.m. Pacific Coast time, because of all the clients in my workshops that are on the East Coast in New York and Florida and Pittsburgh and Atlanta, whatever. It's kind of difficult for them. 7 to 10 p.m. in Pacific Coast time is like 10 p.m. to 1 a.m. on the East Coast, and they're kind of fading out in the last hour of the webinar workshop. So plus I've got people in Europe. We had a lady last week from Great Britain, in the UK, that set her alarm, she said, for 3 a.m. I wasn't even aware that 7 p.m. here in Los Angeles is like 3 a.m. in the UK. And so, but she was committed enough to set her alarm and get up at 8 o'clock just to do the webinar workshop, which she loved. But she got the good news when she was on last week, or was it the week before, that we're moving next week to 1 p.m. Pacific Coast time instead of 7 p.m. So starting next Saturday, instead of 7 p.m., we'll be on at 1 p.m., 1 to 4 p.m. I'll be online instead of 7 to 10. And so hopefully it's a lot more convenient, not only for those of you on the East Coast or on Eastern Standard Time, but also for those people in Europe and Asia, where it's such a different time difference. At least it's more doable. Instead of 3 o'clock in the morning in the UK, now you can join in around whatever it is, 9 or 10 in the evening, and it's a little more doable. And I don't know what the time would be in Australia, New Zealand, Japan, and China and India, but hopefully it's more doable. That's about the earliest I can do it. I'm pretty booked up in the mornings. After the pandemic, I work in clinic until 12 noon usually, which is just a few blocks from here, and we'll be returning to that soon. But in the meantime, I'm going to continue to do these weekly webinar workshops because it's a way to reach people from all over that can't get to Los Angeles. So it looks like we finally got a question here. Christopher, welcome, Christopher. What's your favorite cutting-edge interest in sound therapy of late? Well, cutting-edge interest. I've been doing this for a lot of years, so the whole of sound therapy is my cutting-edge interest, but as I mentioned, some of the aspects earlier that I'm covering in the webinar workshops, if that's what you're talking about, some of the leading edge aspects of sound therapy and vibrational healing. Like I said, first and foremost, that a lot of people don't really understand or give a lot of credence to, but is vitally important, is the diagnostic brain voice sound analysis. that's vitally important, because anybody who's calling themselves a sound healer, doing some kind of sound healing work and isn't doing any diagnostics, is not really doing a fair job for people, because it's too dangerous if you don't know how to do diagnostic work because of what I mentioned earlier. If you give somebody a frequency that they have an excess of in their brainwave pattern, you can exacerbate a health issue, whether physical or emotional, and you know, you don't want to be harming people. That's one of the reasons I switched from sound machines to using vocal harmonics. Several reasons, but the two biggest reasons is, one, sound machines, although they can be effective, number one, they're not as effective as the harmonics in the human voice, which is natural and organic, and number two, they're dangerous. You know, you can, like I said, be harmed. You can't be harmed with the human voice. If you get the wrong frequency with the harmonics, with a harmonic recording or treatment or something like that, it can't hurt you. You know, you might not get benefit from it if it's the wrong frequency, but it's not going to hurt you. Contrary, instruments, sound machines, synthesizers, tone generators, all these other kinds of instruments can cause damage if you get the wrong frequency. Not only can it make you dizzy and uncomfortable, or sometimes feel invasive, but whether it feels invasive or not, on the subconscious level, it can really do some harm, because if you get an excess frequency, that's one of the things that we do toning release work, to release blocked energy that you have an excess of in the brainwave pattern. That's an important part of the sound therapy methodology, is to release excess sounds, because you can have illness and chronic health problems just as easily from an excess of sound as a deficiency in sound. That's another thing a lot of people don't understand, and can easily be identified in a diagnostic brain-voice sound analysis. Because if it's in your brain, it's going to be in your voice. If it's dormant or missing from your brain, it's going to be dormant or missing from the voice. So it's very important to really look into diagnostic sound therapy before you get into any therapeutic stuff, number one. Number two, avoid these sound baths. You know, I don't know how it is in other parts of the country, but in California, it's sort of like everybody's a sound healer. You know, somebody reads something, you know, in a book, or Google something, or attends a workshop, and then all of a sudden, you know, they're calling themselves a sound healer. There's a lot more to it than just sound, being a sound healer. In fact, I'm involved with some people on in Northern California, some elders in the field that I've known for many years, and we're trying to set up an organization to monitor the ethics and standards of sound healing, because of all these people doing these dangerous sound baths, not knowing what they're giving people, if they're giving them a frequency that they have an excess of or a deficiency of, or they're just like throwing stuff against the wall. Like if you got a plate of spaghetti with marinara sauce and you throw it against the wall, how much is going to stick? You know, you're just kind of winging it. And that's kind of what sound baths are like, or these, you know, so-called sound healers that, you know, are well-intentioned. I mean, I'm not judging anybody here. You know, I don't judge people. But I have to judge behavior, because I'm in this to be of service to people. You know, I live to give. I love being of service and supporting people in their healing journey. And so when I see people doing things that are counterproductive, that can, you know, create harm by giving people a tone or a sound that they have an excess of in their brainwave pattern, it's not, you know, that's not good. You know, it can be damaging, and it can be that much harder to correct themselves if they're given frequencies that they have an excess of, particularly when they're put into a vulnerable state, which is part of the modality of sound baths. And a lot of these so-called sound healers is they'll relax you or have you do a meditation, bring a pillow and a blanket and lie down, and they'll have beautiful ambient sounds. And they don't realize if you've got a serious health problem, these beautiful ambient sounds are not likely to help very much. You know, if you've got a cancerous tumor or a heavy addiction or a serious environmental allergy or any kind of a serious problem, it could take a very unusual sound. It could take a very uncomfortable or annoying sound, like what? It could be a sound like yatata 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 yatata. Now, who wants to sit around listening to a sound like that? Not many of us, I don't think. But if it would help you to correct a health issue, where's your priority? Is your priority just listening to beautiful ambient sound to relax, or is your priority to heal yourself, to divest yourself of unhealthy energies in the body? I think that would be my priority. I mean, that's how I got into this work. I mean, I had chronic kidney stones for like 7 years. Every year, like clockwork, I had a kidney stone. And I learned how to avoid surgery because I've always been into, alternative modalities and holistic health. And I discovered that the combination of vitamin B6 and magnesium will soften and shrink kidney stones. So I learned when I had my kidney stone attack, I would take the B6 and magnesium every night before I went to bed. When the bladder fills up with urine, and the B6 and magnesium will tend to soften and shrink the stone, the kidney stone, so it'll pass through the urethra, the ureter, the bladder, and you can pass it. And so that's kind of how I avoided never having surgery in 7 years of chronic kidney stones. But it wasn't much fun having this little cone screening or straining my urine every day to try to catch the stone and waiting for it to pass and make its journey from the kidney down through the ureter and the bladder and all this. And it usually took 7 or 8 weeks, a couple times 9 weeks, to pass the stone, which I successfully did every year like clockwork. But when I got into sound therapy back in 1992, I was anxious to use my self-management auditory device and sound machine, which I had invested over $4,000 in. And I was really bummed out when it didn't work. Here I knew my frequencies. I had done, I had my diagnostic analysis done. I knew what frequencies were strong and which ones were a little weak, and applied the frequencies. I didn't get any benefit from the pain I was in. This is the first day of the kidney stone attack, in California back in 1992. And so here I am, trying to change the frequencies and playing it through these subwoofer speakers, and I just had to give up. I wasn't getting any benefit from the pain. So I just got on my bed and did some meditation and some yogic breathing that I've learned. I've been involved in sound yoga since I was in college, and I'm still involved in that. Never did I know at the time when I was in college studying sound yoga that it would lead me into being a sound therapist. That was not in my brainwave pattern at the time. But, we never know how spirit moves us. But in any case, back on my journey with sound, I turned off my sound machine, started meditating and doing some, yogic breathing to help the pain. And then about 20 or 30 minutes into my meditation, which didn't totally relieve the pain, but it gave me some benefit, I started hearing these sounds, and it sounded like it was coming from behind me, but I was leaning against the wall, sitting in my bed, and there was nothing behind me but the wall. I went outside, and then I realized the sound wasn't coming from behind me, it was actually coming from me. I realized the sounds were coming from my own voice, and they weren't anything like the sounds I used to make as a jazz singer in Chicago. I was a jazz singer in Chicago for over 10 years and doing vocal versions of, Chick Corea and Miles Davis and Freddie Hubbard and all these favorites of mine when I was in college. And so, I knew how to use the voice, but it was strictly for singing. And this sound that was coming through me wasn't like anything I'd ever done as a singer. And so I hadn't read anything about harmonics or overtones at the time, and I wasn't even really trained in music. I've been trained in the voice, in the human voice, but I wasn't really trained in in music. So, but I just kind of went with these tones, kind of channeling through me, I guess. And as I was meditating, and it felt kind of good, I just went with it. And then after 15, 20 minutes, it stopped, and I just continued to meditate. And then another 5 or 10 minutes later, they started coming up again, and I just kind of let myself make these sounds and just kind of went with the flow of it. And this went on probably for about an hour and a half, and then I had to use the bathroom. I got up, and I'm standing there in the bathroom just, taking a leak, forgive my French. As I'm standing there, I feel a little twinge, and I passed the stone into the toilet. The first day, this had never happened to me before. It always took me 7 or 8 weeks, or sometimes 9 weeks, to pass the stone, and using vitamin B6 and magnesium and everything I could know to do to avoid surgery. And this happened just very naturally. So I wasn't even sure if it happened. I didn't even know what was going on. But I fished this little thing out of the toilet, almost like a large grain of sand or something. It was very tiny, and put it in a tissue. And the next day, I went to UCLA Medical Center to see my doctor and get an X-ray. And they did an X-ray, and he said, "Wayne, your stone is gone." And I said, "Yeah, I kind of thought so." Here, and I handed him this tissue with this stone he sent to the chemist. And the next week, he got back to me and said, "Yeah, it was a calcium oxalate stone." Most kidney stones are calcium oxalate. Sometimes they're, they're uric acid stones, but most of the time they're calcium oxalate. And that's what my stone was. And so it confirmed and validated the fact that I did pass the kidney stone with sound. And but then I got concerned with not having to go through this again the next year, like I had done every year for 7 years. And I wanted to get to the root of why my body was creating kidney stones. So I did a little more research. I read a bunch of books about, there wasn't that many books out there about sound healing and toning, and I'd never read any of them until that occurred. And then I grabbed anything I could to study. And there were some good books by some of these, elders in the sound community, Don Campbell, Kay Gardner, Jonathan Goldman, who gave me a wonderful recommendation and review of my book there, Sound Medicine, that you see sitting behind me. But that was many years later. So at the time, like I said, this is back in 1992, and I didn't know what was going on, but I studied and read, and unfortunately none of these books, although they had some good information in them, they didn't teach you how to do sound healing. So I decided, well, I actually spent a couple of years trying out my newfound therapy. I had a few clients that were on the sound machine that were doing well and trusted me, and I asked them if they'd like to try something a little different and unique. And so I put them on the sound machine. I put them on the mic to do a diagnostic analysis. But I had already done that for most of my patients and clients. So, but I had a couple of ladies that, like I said, were making progress, and I know trusted me, and I kind of started with them and said, "Would you like," when they came in for their session on the sound machine, they bring a book and sit for an hour in my healing room listening to their tones coming through the sound machine and the subwoofer speakers. And I said, "Would you like to try something a little different?" And they said, "Sure." Like I said, they trusted me, so I put them down on my couch, in my living room, and I proceeded to tone into the cranium and into the spinal column, the chakras. And at first, when I first started doing this, I didn't know what I was doing, except I knew that I healed and passed my kidney stone that way. That was all I knew at the time. I couldn't find any information in 1992 in any books, so I just winged it. And then the next lady came in a couple days later and asked her the same thing, and she was happy to accommodate my little experiment, and worked with her in the same way, toned into her spinal column and chakras, cranium, and then left. And I was curious to see what the results would be, and to my surprise, the next week, when the first lady came in, before I even had a chance to ask her what she had experienced the previous week, she said, "Can you do that weird thing with your voice again? That was really cool. I felt a lot better this week." And that was the beginning of my new direction in sound therapy, in 1992. Because the second lady, a couple days later, said the exact same thing. She said she felt better, and she had some questions about it. And I gave her the choice of the sound machine or the vocal toning, and she chose the vocal toning. And those ladies healed faster than all my other clients at the time, and moved on and healed their various issues with pain and what they had been working on, and it kind of validated me to explore more. And so for the next couple of years, I researched the sound therapy, and when I couldn't find a book that really taught it, I just studied my own manual as a certified sound therapist, and working with bioacoustics and harmonics and some of these other modalities. I just started focusing on using the diagnostic sound analysis, which I found the most valuable part of the bioacoustics, and I pretty much trashed the rest of it. I just kind of gave it up, and I developed my own techniques, which spent more time with the diagnostics, spent more time with the therapeutics, and then, as I mentioned earlier, the research showed that there wasn't anything that can compare with the profound effect of vocal harmonics and overtones on the human body. The sound machines were like a distant third or fourth in the research they did with 100 people over a 60-day period. They monitored people consistently, using blood pressure fluctuations, oxygen saturation, and electroencephalogram readings of the brainwave patterns, and using all this as a criteria for monitoring the effects of sound in the body. They introduced every conceivable kind of sound you can imagine, from music sounds, all kinds of music, from classical music to rock music, to industrial sounds, nature sounds, environmental sounds, anything you can imagine, and to check and monitor the results and the effects on the body with the criteria I just mentioned. And at the end of the study, far and away, there wasn't anything that came close to the harmonics, multiples, and overtones within the human voice. By far had the most profound effect, on the human body. And so that really influenced me. And so I queried these scientists that I had studied with, and not to mention purchased this sound machine for over $4,000. In their own manual, I even discovered, I don't know how I had ignored it earlier, but this research was even in the manual, that the multiples and harmonics in the human voice were the most effective sound. And while their sound machine was the most effective, according to the research, compared to other sound machines, I asked them why they weren't just using the harmonics and overtones of the human voice. Why use a machine instead? And then the answer they gave me really flustered me. I mean, they said that they wanted to have a controlled environment so that they could monitor the reactions to people and control the the data and blah blah, a bunch of psychobabble. I think they just did it to because they want to make money selling sound machines. I don't know, but in any event, that was very unsatisfactory. But the second second answer they gave me really blew my mind. They said people don't have much respect for the human body. They're much more impressed with blinking red lights and sliders and view meters and the technology. And I questioned at the time, but actually they were right. I found over the years, subsequently, that people are more impressed with that stuff, and they leave the common sense on the table, so to speak. But nevertheless, those answers I got from the scientists just really turned me off. It took the wind out of my sails after investing, over $4,000 in multimeters and subwoofer speakers and this sound machine. Then I found out, I looked a little more closer at the research on the sound machines, and I found the other reason that they created this sound machine that I had invested in was because what was unique about this sound machine, and the reason it was the most effective of all the sound machines, better than the Tesla coils or the Royal Rife generators that were out at the time, is their self-management auditory device is mimicking the frequency wave pattern of the human voice. And that's why it was effective. And they didn't bother to tell me that, but it was in their training manual. I discovered it on my own. that regardless of what they were saying with all their psychobabble and everything, yeah, it was the more effective sound machine. But what they didn't say is that the most sound machines and instruments and musical instruments and whatever create sine waves, and there's no real healing power in sine waves. And then they've created other machines and tone generators that create square waves or sawtooth waves, and those aren't really much better. But when you look at the human voice and an oscilloscope, which is a machine they have in virtually every recording studio to look at the frequency wave pattern of the voice and various sounds. And I've spent plenty of time in recording studios recording music and albums, so I was familiar with that. When they look at the human voice just with normal speech patterns in the oscilloscope, it makes a very unique waveform pattern. Only the human voice makes what they call a complex wave in a standing wave pattern. And so it looks kind of like a mountaintop range. It keeps fluctuating and changing. It doesn't have a set pattern. It kind of looks like this mountaintop range and just kind of goes up and down without any set pattern. And it just moves like that. And like I said, it's referred to as a complex waveform in a standing wave pattern. And all they did was create a machine that could create that type of waveform pattern. And that was the secret to their success, of how they could get $4,000 for the sound machine and brag about the results, because it's not that it didn't work, it did work. But what they didn't share with people initially is the price, until you query them and look into purchasing one, then you find out they cost over $4,000. But the other thing they didn't share with people is the potential dangers, that if you get the wrong sound that you have an excess of in your brainwave pattern from a sound machine like that, or virtually any sound machine, you can exacerbate any health issues that are going on and make them worse. So it's you have to be really careful with who you're working with. So that's why my sound machine went into storage back in 1993, and it's been there since I abandoned the storage unit, so Lord knows where it is now. But so much for my $4,000 investment in my personal growth. So, like I said, there's so much fear around the human voice and the fifth chakra, but that's where the secrets are. That's where the ultimate healing instrument is. And my first recording is called that, the ultimate healing instrument, the human voice. And it's sitting right under our noses. And why people have all this fear or afraid to dive into it, you can't hurt yourself with the voice. You can hurt yourself with, instruments and sound machines, but you can't hurt yourself using the human voice. It's safe, you could strain your voice. That's about the only way you could hurt yourself, if you do things too loud. But the only time you need some loud toning sounds is when you're doing release work, pain release and release work. You want to use a fair amount of volume, but it's not straining your voice. It's not primal scream therapy. It's sound therapy. So you need to put some volume into it, but it's only like the volume of, like you'd call your friend from across the street, Carol, Frank. It's about that volume, like you'd call your friend from across the street or across a crowded room. That's all you need, is that kind of volume, and use your voice for toning. And if you're not familiar with what toning is, it's just using the human voice to move energy, using primarily vowel sounds, because they have the most energy and the most power. And that's where the harmonics and the regenerative power of overtones and harmonics is, within and between the vowels. And that's something a lot of people don't know, that you can learn. That's one of the things I teach in my workshops, is how to bring out those harmonics and overtones in your voice and in the sound. And it's not that complicated. I mean, people hear me demonstrate it and they say, "Oh, I can't do that." If we have time, I could even demonstrate for you in a few minutes. But it's people get intimidated by it as they see me do it or hear me do it, and I've been doing it for a lot of years, and they say, "Oh, I can't do that. You know, that's too complicated. And it's not really complicated. You might not do it with the proficiency I have. I've been doing it for 28 years, but you can certainly do it. I've taught it to teenagers, as I said earlier. I've taught it to seniors, all kinds of people. Like anything, it just takes a little practice. And it's counter to singing. It's very different from singing techniques. I've had a few voice teachers and singing coaches and come in and at first they're aghast. Oh, that's the wrong way to do this and the wrong way to do that. But once they understand this isn't about singing, it's about moving energy, and it's about healing and helping to empower, you know, people to heal. So anyway, hi Maggie and Christopher and other people that have joined us. If I missed you, there were some other people in there earlier. I was talking, I didn't catch your names. If you're still there, greetings and welcome. As always, welcome to all you Vibra Angels and frequent seers to join us. I'm just here on a Friday for a change instead of Saturday. I'll be on live at 6 o'clock tomorrow doing a free little video because I haven't even gotten to what I came on here for because I distracted myself for some reason talking about you know, my history with chronic kidney stones and how I kind of got into this because somebody was asking me about this a little while ago. I guess it was fresh in my mind with a phone call I got. So let's see. Christopher doesn't have a question. He just purchased your book. Thank you. It's great. Thank you for acknowledgement and for picking up the book. I'm sure you'll enjoy it. You may have discovered there's a separate table of contents for the exercises. I was frustrated not being able to find a book 20 years ago that taught you sound healing. So I decided to write one. It took me 10 years to research it and write it on voice recognition software since I don't really type much. But I did it on Dragon software, voice recognition, and formatted it and edited it. And originally it was self-published some years back, and that was my goal, to self-publish it and sell it on the road and at my workshops until I got picked up by a major publisher, which I did. I got picked up by an East Coast publisher, New Page Books, and they changed the title. You know, original title was overtoning, which I thought I'd coined that word many years ago for toning harmonics and overtones. Which I still like that title, but I kind of agree sound medicine is probably a more accessible title, more descriptive and more commercial. So, you know, if you get signed by a publisher, you have to go along with their publishing agreement, and part of the agreement was to change the cover and the title. So, you know, I like the title, you know, sound medicine. I don't have a problem with that, although I do prefer my artwork on overtoning to the... I mean, the artwork's okay for sound medicine, but mine was a little more, I don't know, I guess you could say metaphysical. It had some light coming out from the mouth and a butterfly beneath it and, you know, waves of energy flowing. It just, I thought it was pretty cool. I collaborated with an artist in Phoenix, Arizona to create the cover. But it's water under the bridge now. The important thing is the content of the book. You know, like I said, or maybe I didn't say, I don't remember, but there's 48 exercises in the book. What I did say is there's a separate table of contents for the exercises, so after you read the book, or you know, even before, you can scan through that second table of contents for the exercises, and you can always go back to your favorite exercises in sound healing and work on those. You know, everybody has their favorites, everybody's unique, just like everybody has their own unique personal frequency pattern. No two people are alike. Each and every one of you have your own kind of sonic fingerprint, as it were. And so that's why it's very unique. If you want more information about the diagnostic sound analysis, though, it's best to call me. You know, unlike other people, I have my phone number on my website and my email address. A lot of people take it off. They don't want to be bothered or, you know, bombarded with sales calls. I do get bombarded with sales calls and emails and stuff, but I try to block them and avoid them because I want to be accessible to the people who need me, people that have questions about professional sound therapy, because there's so many people out there that are not professionals and not doing it properly. And so I want to be as accessible as I can for people. I did have to take my address off my website because I get people coming over to me in West Hollywood California without an appointment and interrupting, my day or time with a client. So I did take my address off the website, but so far the email and phone is still there, and hopefully I won't have to remove them if people don't misuse them. So feel free to write me or call me. I actually prefer calls. Nowadays nobody calls anybody anymore. It's so impersonal. Everybody's got their little pocket computer and just prefers to text. And the phone number actually on my website is a landline, so you can't text it anyway. But I can explain things a lot quicker by phone anyway. To type, complex answers and detailed information in email is not my ideal way of spending time. Like I said, I don't really type, and it's very time consuming to respond to emails. So I prefer actually people to call me, and then I can answer a number of questions in just a few minutes. But anyway, it's up to you guys. But, I'm happy to answer some questions now if you just post it and, there, because it helps me know who's there and interested in what, because it's such a big topic. Like I said, there's hundreds of things I could talk about. Like, for instance, some of the upcoming webinar workshops I've got coming up. Tomorrow night, which is the last one at 7 p.m. Pacific Coast time, tomorrow, Saturday at 7 p.m., is how to measure vibrational frequencies. And so this is a fun exercise and how we use, if you're familiar with dowsing, that's one way to measure them. Obviously the best way to measure frequencies is a diagnostic brain voice sound analysis. But as a backup or a prelude to a diagnostic sound analysis, there are other things that you can do with dowsing, and then a more advanced toning technique that I teach, a form of vocal dowsing, which is a very advanced technique that takes weeks and weeks of practice before you can really get it down. But I'm going to be going over all these things, these principles and exercises in the webinar workshop tomorrow at 7 p.m. So that's the 10th topic, or the 10th webinar in the series. And then on the 27th, next week, a week from tomorrow, the series will start over again, the 10 workshop series, and it'll begin with the 9 core key principles to sound therapy, which really covers a lot. It's a great first webinar to do if you haven't done any. That starts next week at 1 p.m. So because of a lot of people there's more people in my webinar workshop on the East Coast than in California, I'm learning with everybody else. I'm learning from experience that 7 p.m. in the evening is not the greatest time for people on the East Coast, because although it's 7 to 10 here in California, which isn't that late in New York, it's 10 p.m. till 1 a.m. and people are fading, particularly between 12 and 1 a.m. So I've took that into consideration. And now I've also got some people in Europe that are in the webinar workshops weekly. And there was a lady in the UK that told me she had to set her alarm for 3 a.m. So 7 p.m. in the UK is 3 a.m. That's why I'm doing my workshops or my private sessions and diagnostic sound analysis at all sorts of strange hours, for me at least, in the States, because I oftentimes do European people around midnight or 1 a.m. Because that's the morning for them. And so it's more convenient for them when they get up in the morning. And then I'm a late night person anyway, from being in the music business. I don't mind being up late and doing it for people in need. But it's a little even more difficult. Some of the people, my clients and students and friends in Taiwan, Hong Kong, Shanghai, not to mention Tokyo and Australia, they're like 14, 15 hours ahead of us. In India too. My webmaster actually lives in India and does a lot of my posting and on Facebook and social media. And he's a good guy, and he's in India. So even to talk with my webmaster, it's usually around 1 or 2 in the morning because of the time changes. So I never know if I'm sleeping in the daytime or the evening, but that's the karma of a committed sound therapist. What can I say? I'm not complaining. It's just that, it's any kind of time that I need to be there for someone if I possibly can, I will do that. Let's see, do we have a question here? Good old Christopher is in there. Good. What does a deficiency or excess sound like in the human voice? Well, it's not so much what it sounds like. See, I put people on a microphone, you see, and the microphone is plugged into an orchestral tuner. I don't use a sound machine. And even though one of my students up in Seattle some 15 or more years ago, actually I think it's more like about 18 years ago, he created a program, a computer program that does diagnostic sound analysis in like 15 seconds. And he was so grateful for all the things that I taught him. He featured me in his book. He wrote a book, kind of a left brain kind of science book that incorporated some sound therapy stuff, and I gave him permission to publish my 3 R's, the 3 types of sound, which is something that we'll be covering in one of the workshop webinars. And so he was very grateful, and he sent me this program, and it was very kind of him. And I started using it. He said it would save me a lot of time and money. Instead of spending 90 minutes on a diagnostic sound analysis, I could do it in 15 seconds, which was kind of exciting. And I tried it, and it was reasonably accurate, to my surprise. It was surprisingly accurate. But after using it for a few weeks, I came to the conclusion that it just wasn't the best way for me to go. I'm not in this to make more money, to save time and make more money. I'm in this to be the best service and support to people as I possibly can. And that seems to involve being doing it with my orchestral tuner, mainly because I'm a whole brain person. You know, when you just use these gadgets and this digital technology, it's kind of straight left brain stuff. And even though that information is pretty accurate, I get a lot more information on my own through not only logic and reason, but through the intuitive faculties of looking at the I just tune into people as a very intuitive and whole brain person. I use my right brain to tune into the past people, sometimes the future, the present, the past. And I just been doing this long enough that it's just, I trust my instincts, and people usually are kind of blown away. They don't know how I do what I do. I don't even know how I do what I do. I'm just very grateful to Spirit for supporting me and giving me the benefit of doing what I'm doing. So, as I was saying, I experimented with this program of doing a quicker diagnostic sound analysis, but it just didn't meet all the needs that I had. So I was very grateful to my friend and colleague in Seattle for sending it to me, but I went back to using the orchestral tuner, which takes a bit longer, but I'm just tuned in to people that way. It's very accurate, and an orchestral tuner has a special microphone. They tune orchestral instruments like cellos and bassoons and violins, whatever, with a special microphone they put on the sound body of the instrument to get the tuning right and adjust the tuning properly. But what's really unique for me, and why I use this orchestral tuner, is it gives me a digital readout of both the note frequencies and the octave, and that's what I need. I need to know the octave of your speaking voice, and I need to know the frequencies that are in your voice that are reflecting your brainwave pattern, because what's in your brain is in your voice, and what's in your voice is obviously in your brain. And so if something's deficient or not coming through in your brainwave pattern, if it's dormant, weak, then it's going to be dormant and weak in your voice as well. So I hope that answers your question, Christopher. I've been doing the analysis now for 28 years, and I totally believe in it. It's a very necessary and required part of sound therapy to really get an accurate read of people's frequencies. It's like a sonic fingerprint. No two people are alike. I've even done identical twins, and they have similar frequencies, but they're not the same. They're distinctively different. And so let me see if we can, I can't see anybody else's names here. Okay. So anyway, so hopefully that answers your question, Christopher. When I'm reading the tuner, I can see if these frequencies keep repeating over and over again. That's an indication of excess. It depends on the time frame and how much time we're doing. And I'm creating a chart by hand with color pens while I'm reading the orchestral tuner and listening, to the sound and reading the information on the tuner, and then applying it to the chart. And then a pattern begins to emerge. And then I start to see which frequencies and notes are weak, and so I target the questions in those areas that I know are related. Like for instance, I know, and this is in my correlative healing chart for sound therapy that I published back in 1993. I know, for instance, that the note of D on the physical level relates to the digestion, it relates to liver, pancreas, gallbladder, the spleen, a lot of these things in the digestive system physically, if there's any physical weaknesses there. But I usually start on the emotional level because the emotional stuff is what usually comes first. Not corrected, it'll eventually break down physically. But so, like the note of D, like I said, on the physical level, D relates to the overall digestion, and it relates to the blood sugar, spleen, gallbladder, liver, some of these things. And but on the emotional level, the D relates to self-approval issues, self-esteem issues, fears, a lot of stuff around the second chakra, emotions, and sometimes not real healthy boundaries around your personal self. And so there's certain things emotionally that I can glean from the analysis. And then we see with our mutual dialoguing if it's more present on the physical or emotional level, and then we target those areas. And so there's like two halves to the therapy. And I liken it to food. I think food is a good example to use to explain sound. In my workshops over the years, I found that getting into too much scientific explanation can mislead people or be, sometimes beyond their understanding or be confusing. And I generally find out that the simpler it is, the more truthful and accurate it is. Spiritual principles are like that. If it's too complicated and intellectual, it's usually bullshit. Forgive my French, but that's just what I've learned over the years, that things, the most powerful universal principles are very simple, and they're based in what I call the Trinity of sound, light, and love. And so what is this question? What are they saying? Singing into the mic? Well, they're not singing into the microphone. So let me clarify that first. Thanks for your question, Christopher. This research is totally based upon the speaking voice. You don't have to sing or chant or tone or make funny sounds. It's not about any of that. The research is based on a normal speaking voice. And it's not even on the tonality of the voice, because I'll get people that are a little hoarse or have a cold or something like that, and they say, oh, I can't do this, my voice isn't up to par, or I'm kind of hoarse. And it doesn't really matter, because what this is looking at is not the tonality, the smoothness or roughness of your voice. What it's looking at is the specific note frequencies that your brain is subconsciously selecting. So if you, for instance, you could be a musician and say, I'm going to go to the market and pick up some groceries for dinner tonight. Okay, so that's just a sentence, going to the market. Well, what note frequency is on market? What note frequency is on groceries or dinner or tonight or, any of these words that you use? I mean, even a musician doesn't really know. I mean, who would care to break it down a sentence and try to figure out what notes are in each syllable and each word? No one pays any attention to that. But see, that's where the key to your frequency lies, is what notes your brain is subconsciously selecting, because it's going to subconsciously select notes that it's comfortable with, that it has a lot of, and it's secure in. It's just sort of a inner, you could even call it intuitive or subconscious way of, we don't think about what notes are in our voice when we say, I'm going to go dancing, or I'm going to go to the store, or whatever. It's so it's just spontaneous, and it's on the subconscious. So it doesn't matter what they're saying. Well, I take that back. It does matter what they're saying, but it matters in the context of the questions that I ask. For instance, the first few questions I call baseline questions. Baseline questions are designed to just hear the voice. And that's the section. It doesn't really matter what you're talking about. I may ask you, where do you live? What do you do? What do you like? So you can talk about that or even change the subject. It doesn't matter. I just need to establish your octave and where the note frequencies tend to cluster, in the bottom of the octave or the top of the octave, or where. I've been doing this long enough now, for 28 years, I don't even really need to look at that for the octave, because I can generally tell a person's octave as soon as they start talking, as I've been doing this long enough. However, I don't know where the frequencies are going to cluster. If they're going to cluster together at the bottom of the octave or the top of the octave. So that's why I have to do a few baseline questions at the beginning to establish exactly where their focus is in their communication from their brain. And so once those few questions are answered, then I've got a baseline, which is kind of like a general pattern. Then we have to get more specific. You can't just go with a general pattern. And so there's a lot of questions I have to ask. So that first group of questions, they can be kind of chatty, because the more they talk, the quicker I'm going to get their baseline pattern. But then once I have that baseline pattern, then I give them a cue, and I say to them, okay, I've got your basic pattern, and now I'm going to move to the second group of questions. That's your cue now. When I go to the second group of questions, you want to keep your answers concise to one sentence, because there's a lot of questions I need to fit in, and we don't want to be here for 4 or 5 hours. So, you need to answer succinctly and briefly. And that way we can get through all the questions and move quickly through it. Because, sometimes I work in a hospital or a nursing home, and some of these elderly folks in their 80s and 90s, they haven't even talked to anybody in a month or more, and they just start unloading, which you can kind of understand. They start telling their stories and talking, and I have to keep interrupting them and reeling them in and say, no, you got to keep it to one sentence. So, I'll interrupt people if I have to keep them on track, but I'd rather explain things up front so that they don't ramble on with their stories, which sometimes old people do, and sometimes I do. So, so that's the essence. I need at least 3 or 4 syllables in order to get the frequency that's emanating from the brainwave pattern. So, okay, so after I've got that general pattern, that baseline from those questions, second group of questions are about visual stimuli, how you see shapes, forms, colors, that nature. And when you talk about those things, that reveals more of, because it targets another part of your brain, another part of your brainwave pattern. It reveals more information. And that information is very useful and very accurate to apply to you. And I see the frequencies that are coming through now, and I'm marking it in your chart with a different color pen, so you can see the differences and the levels. And so then, after we cover those questions, it starts to repeat. It doesn't change very much. After 4 or 5 minutes, you see the same frequencies repeating. So then I move to the third group of questions, which are about linear time and space. And I ask you questions about the past or the future, like what did you do last week, or last month, or last year, or what are you planning to do next month, or next year, or 5 years from now. So when you think about the past or the future, it targets another part of the brain, and it brings out more of your vibrational spectrum. So it starts with the baseline questions, just seeing this much of their frequency. And then with the visual stimuli, now I see this much of their frequency. And then with the next set of questions of time and space, and I see this much of their frequency. And the fourth group of questions are a little more personal questions that are about how they see themselves. How do you see yourself? How do you view the world? How do you view your family, relationships, sex, politics, religion? These are the things that kind of shape our belief system and make us different from our neighbor. And so these are important. And I mean, I'm not interested in the personal details of your life, but I am interested in the frequencies that are in your voice and your brain when you talk about these things. And so that's very important for me to be able to help you adequately. So that's generally as far as we go. That last group of questions usually brings out the whole enchilada, as we say in Southern California, and everything I need. Occasionally, maybe 10 or 15% of the time, I'll have to go a little further. Sometimes people are a little nervous or they're not 100% honest, although usually people that come to this work are pretty conscious people. They're generally people that are intelligent and pretty, spiritually motivated or take responsibility for their health and wellness. So I usually don't have problems with people at all. I only attract conscious people. And that's something you'll find when you get into sound. It'll change your reality. And as you raise your frequency, you'll start attracting people of a higher frequency into your life. And, like one of the things I teach in my tantric toning workshop is don't be sexually intimate with somebody that has a lower frequency than you. You take on their DNA, as in semen and this kind of thing. It's very, very counterproductive. So there's so many aspects of sound therapy that we can explain. So let's see, Christopher's asking, can this be done over the phone? Yeah, well, I guess this is the first time you've heard. Usually by this time I've already explained that I've been doing this over the phone for about 12 years now. For the first 15 years of my practice, I didn't do it over the phone because I didn't trust the phones or the technology, and I just did it in person to make sure we had the best service. But I found a Panasonic phone some years ago. I was experimenting around, and I found a Panasonic phone that really interprets the voice perfectly. You can't even tell you're on a phone or a speaker phone. And then I got a special microphone. And so I guess about 12 years ago or something like that, I started doing phone diagnostic sound analysis over the phone because it works great, and I can do it long distance. As I mentioned in the beginning of this presentation, I have clients in Europe and in Asia that I can talk to easily and for free on Facebook Messenger or WhatsApp. And it's a good signal, and it's free. People don't have to fly over here. Back in the 90s, people used to fly here from Japan and South Africa and Europe, not to mention New York and all over from the United States. But I had a lot of people from Europe and Asia that flew here because I'm, the only one that does what I do. I think there's a handful of people out there that do, some diagnostic sound analysis, but they're usually doctors, and they usually charge, several $100s, like $300 and up for it, $300 to $500. I only charge $185, and plus the other people that do it, I've learned, only spend about 20 to 30 minutes doing the diagnostic analysis. I spend 90 minutes because I've found over the years it's important. I'm not interested in saving time and money. I'm interested in the best possible results and best possible service. So I found, and plus I include more than just the diagnostic analysis. I do a little overview of what I am going to do and how I do it, what I want you to do and not do. I cover that first. Then I put you on the microphone. You're on the microphone for anywhere from 20 minutes to as long as sometimes 30 minutes. I'm doing your chart. Then after that, I interpret the chart. I do a diagnostic sound chart interpretation and tell you where you're strong and weak physically, emotionally, vibrationally. It's all there, and I can, tell you that, in 30 minutes or so. So I interpret the chart for you, and then you'll have some questions. So I answer your questions and put it in the context. I can even see in your sound chart the past and the future to some extent, because there's a difference between past emotions, like grief and a broken heart and anger and resentment. These are emotions that are in the past. Future emotions are of a different nature. Future emotions are things like anxiety, fear, worry, and also control issues. So we have to identify which emotions are you more affected by or manifest in your nature. I have some people that I work with that they don't hardly have any future emotions. It's all in the past. They have buried resentment and anger, and they've suffered from bad relationships or a traumatic situation or whatever in the past, and we work on the past emotional stuff and don't have to concern ourselves with the future. And then conversely, some people, they don't even have any childhood issues, or they've healed their childhood issues or past emotions or whatever it might be, but they have a lot of anxiety or fear or worry about the future. And so that will tend to give us the tendency to control things and to be controlling in our life. I know that was an issue I had for many years. I didn't even realize or recognize that I had some repressed anger and control issues. You know, I never really saw it. It's hard to be objective with yourself sometimes. I thought, you know, back in whenever it was, the 90s or just before my early stages in sound therapy, or before I even got into it, I did a lot of personal growth work, and I worked on healing my relationship with my father and with my ex-wife, and I thought I'd pretty much been done with it. But, you know, when you get into sound, it's like meditation. It actually is meditation, a form of meditation. And I got deep within myself and realized that although I did a significant amount of healing with my father and my ex-wife, there were some still buried resentments and some other things. And being kind of a perfectionist, I was kind of a control freak that I didn't recognize. And so I set about healing those things. And it took me a few years to really correct it and rise above it. It was challenging. But I'm very grateful. I mean, I'm a walking testament to sound therapy. I mean, I was on oxygen for 2.5 years back in the early 2000s, and I had to speak at health conferences as a keynote speaker. I couldn't be up there with oxygen tanks plugged in my nose like I'm a smoker. I've never smoked alcohol. I was going to say smoked alcohol. I've never smoked cigarettes or drank alcohol in my life. Maybe experimenting when I was a teenager or something, but you know, that was never part of my lifestyle or my interest really. So I'm blessed and grateful for that. But at the same time, you know, I had other bad habits, you know, food-wise and otherwise, and had to, you know, over the years clean up my my act and my lifestyle, and moved into, you know, becoming vegan, which is the highest frequency food. I did a webinar a couple weeks ago on the frequencies of life and the frequencies of food and the 3 levels of karma. You know, that's why I say there's so many things I could talk about. I'm dying to reveal to you right now, but I just can't in the interest of time. But if there's a question, I'll try to answer the question before we cut this down. I haven't even gotten to what I came online here for to tell you, which is mainly the time change in the webinar workshops on Saturday. That tomorrow is the last one at 7 p.m. And that one is going to be on the how to measure sound frequencies. And it's very interesting and fun. And then next week we'll move to 1 p.m. and we'll go back to the first webinar, which is the 9 core keys to sound healing. And then the following week after that will be detoxing the body-mind, which is very, very powerful, because most people I've run across, probably 90% of the people that I've run across, are carrying stuff from childhood. And when I'm saying childhood, I'm talking about the first 6 or 7 years of life, when we're like little sponges and we're taking in all this energy from around us. And most of it comes from our parents. And even though our parents may have loved us and tried their best to support us. I mean, I'm a parent. My daughter is grown now, but we're very close, and I love her dearly. And, you know, I never got training in how to be the best parent. I mean, I never got training how to be the best husband, let alone the best father. So we don't get the right training in the schools, in my opinion. So, you know, everybody's kind of winging it. And unfortunately, when we're in our primary years, the first 5 to 7 years of our life, we're like little sponges, and child psychologists know we take on all this energy from our parents, and whatever your weaknesses are in your parents, we take on ourselves. And so, it's not to judge our parents, but those are our main influences. As little children, we look at our parents like gods, and, they can do wrong. And we're also very egocentric as babies and small children. We think the world revolves around us, for us. We have our needs, and our parents meet our needs, and we're kind of spoiled in that regard because we expect things to be done for us, because that's what happens from the time we're born. And then at some point we have to reach a state of maturity and kind of start taking responsibility for ourselves, and that's when the mind becomes active and starts kind of rebelling and taking their own decisions, which can go off in a lot of different directions. And so anyway, that's just life. But the point I'm trying to make is that first 5 to 7 years, before we armor ourselves, around 6 or 7 years old, we start to armor ourselves to protect our vulnerability from all the stuff that's going on in our family and our environment, our siblings, our relatives, our schoolmates, our teachers. All these things affect us, so we start protecting ourselves emotionally and subconsciously. Before that, that's the really vulnerable part. And the amazing thing is I see people that are carrying these issues around their whole life. They're 40s, 50s, 60s-year-old, in their 70s, and they're still carrying this stuff around since childhood. So that's why, in my weekend intensive workshop, the first exercise we do has to do with clearing out the toxic energy. In the webinar workshops, it's actually in the second webinar workshop that we do, because the first one is so important to start with a strong foundation. Like next Saturday, a week from tomorrow, we'll be doing the 9 core keys to sound healing. So in my opinion, it's very important to understand those 9 core keys, to understand how sound works, and continuing how sound therapy and vibrational healing works. And then once you digest and understand those 9 core keys, then you can more effectively dive into it. So in the second workshop the following week, with detoxing the body-mind, that's where we start off with this very powerful exercise for healing this past stuff that comes into our life in the first 6 to 7 years of our life, when, like child psychologists say, we're like little sponges and we take on all this stuff. And that's why when parents get divorced or separated, kids naturally feel it's their fault, because of our egocentricity at that age. We think, the world is revolving around us. When good things happen, we feel we've created it, we're happy. And when bad things happen, we kind of take it on ourselves that we did something wrong, that our parents are mad at us or something, and that's why they're splitting up. And so there's all these psychological factors I can't get into now, but mainly I'm interested in getting into exercises that clear that energy, that help you to transcend that energy. And even if you don't do it immediately in the workshop, you've got the tools to take home with you and to keep working on it, because everybody's going to have their favorite principles and exercises that they like, and other ones that maybe take them a little longer to resonate with. It's not the same for everybody. We're all coming from our own place, or our own karmic place, our own experiential place. So, we may have some of the same general needs, but our specific needs are different. And the wonderful thing about sound therapy, and the reason I'm doing 10 workshops, is to cover everything. So you can join, I haven't mentioned yet, as I've mentioned in previous weeks, that during the pandemic I highly discounted these workshop webinars. When I do them traveling to different cities for a 3-hour workshop, I charge $95 for a 3-hour sound therapy workshop, which is a very hands-on experiential workshop. If I do them in Los Angeles, where I live, and I don't have to travel and don't have the travel expenses, I charge less. I charge $75 for a 3-hour workshop rather than $95, which is what I charge on the road. But here, part because of the pandemic and part because I'm introducing this online, primarily to Facebook people and whoever else finds me from my YouTube page or my LinkedIn page or my Instagram page or Twitter, you know, I'm offering like a 56% discount. It's a phenomenal discount, and people are getting their certificates after tomorrow. The people that have attended all 10 workshops, 30 hours, a 3-hour workshop. There's 10 complete workshop webinars, and we've got a number of people that are graduating tomorrow and completing their 10th workshop, and will get a certificate in sound healing from the Sound Therapy Center of Los Angeles. So if you sign up for the next 10 that starts on the 27th, you'll not only get the certificate in sound healing, but you'll get a free workshop as well. So that's the way I set it up for these people that are graduating tomorrow. They all took advantage of signing in advance for all 10. If you sign up and pay for all 10 workshops in advance, you get one free workshop and you get your certificate of in sound healing. But you know, you don't have to do all 10. You can do 1 or 2 if you want. If you're just dipping your toe in the pool. If you haven't experienced any of my other Facebook Live videos, which, by the way, you can go on my website and there's about over a dozen videos that you can view for free. It doesn't cost you anything. They're on the video page at WaynePerry.com, my website, and at WaynePerry.com there's a number of pages. You can learn a lot from perusing the website. You probably learn the most from the video page because it says videos, and you click that tab, and you've got access to about 15 videos that I've done. Some I've done on Facebook, some I've done at health and wellness conferences, some I've done on other social media or live platforms. But you can see for yourself. You can learn a lot from those. Then there's a blog page on the website that has articles that I've written for various magazines, as well as some articles from magazines that were written about me or my work. So you can learn a lot from the blogs page. There's also a testimonials page of hundreds of people that have derived phenomenal results from the sound therapy over the years working with me, and so you can check out the testimonials. What I would want to call your attention to at this time would be the events page. If you go to WaynePerry.com/events, that's got my calendar with all the 10 topics of the workshops, so you can peruse the different topics, and if you just want to do 1 or 2, if you don't have the time or the finances or something to do the whole training of 10 workshops for the certificate and the free workshop, you can, sign up for 1 or 2. That's only $33, instead of $95 or $75, it's only $33 per workshop. So that's only until August 29th. I decided to extend it one more series of 10 workshop webinars at this discounted price of a 56% discount. If you do an individual workshop at only $33, and if you do all 10 and get a free workshop included, it's even bigger than 56%. It's about 66%, 70% discount. I don't know, I'm not that keen on mathematics to figure it out in the moment what the percentage discount is for getting a free webinar out of 10 at $33. Well, it's obvious what that would be, but just figure out what the percentage is getting a free one, and you're getting at least 60-something% discount, if not 70% discount. But anyway, that's going to go on until August 29th. If you're planning on doing the whole series for the certificate and the free one, you got to jump on it this week because it'll start on the 27th, and after the 27th, the price won't be going up on the individual workshops, but on the workshop on the 27th, you won't be able to do that one until September, and then it'll be raised to the full price in September I'll be going back. Hopefully the pandemic is over and I have to start paying my bills. I'm doing this for not very much income, just to be of service to people and help those out that have some health problems or are struggling, whether it's with health issues or with boredom, being locked in the house or whatever. I just want to do what I can, and this is the best I can do, is offer you a 56% discount on these webinars, which I think is significant. So, as they say, get it while it's hot, and it's hot right now. So, that's available. And the link is on the events page. The only link that's on Facebook right now, I believe, is the one for tomorrow night. There's one on my timeline, Wayne Perry, and on the Sound Therapy Center of Los Angeles page that I think I'm coming at you from right now. That's my Facebook business page. But, I've posted a lot of things in a lot of groups on tomorrow's workshop, and a link is included in the posts if you just want to sign up for tomorrow night, which is the last workshop at 7 p.m. But if you're interested in the new series starting next week, starting at 1 p.m. or any of the other following weeks, 1 p.m., you can not only find the link, but the descriptions to all the individual webinar workshops at the events page at wayneperry.com. In fact, you can just dial in or type in wayneperry.com/events, and that'll take you directly into the events page, where you can see all the 10 workshops, their titles and descriptions, and then below them there's a link. There's actually 2 links for 2 more days, today and tomorrow. There's a link to join for June 20th. So if you want to join tomorrow, you need to click that link. If you don't see it on Facebook, you can click the June 20th link on the events page of my website. But the other link is the more important one that covers the next 10 webinar workshops from June 27th to August 29th. Those 2 months of webinars are covered with that link. And when you click that link, it says a template, I think, that shows the 10 titles of the upcoming workshops, but you can sign up for whatever you want. You can click on 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 or the whole series. Like I said, with the whole series, you'll get 1 free as well as your certificate in sound healing. So that was what I really came on here for, that I neglected to mention earlier. And I've been on here for, over an hour already? Can't believe how time flies. So I guess I will have to take leave of your senses soon. Let me just see if there are any other questions from Christopher or anybody else. Christopher, you're the only one that posted some questions. Thank you for that. It always helps me because, there's so many things I could talk about. I never know which direction to go in. Some people are coming from a musical background. Some people are coming from a healing background. Some people are coming from various places. So in any event, I'm looking here on my screen to see if there's any other questions. I don't want to leave anybody hanging here, but I don't see anything. Well, hi Jamie and Diego and some of these other people that came in late that I missed. Unfortunately, I can't bring them on camera, I don't think, because I'm not all that tech savvy myself here, but I do see a little picture of the people up in the right-hand corner there, but it's so small I can't see who it is, and there's no name there. But anyway, point is, if you have any questions, just post them right now. Jamie's asking me something. Let's see here. Is the sound therapy related to inner sound? Good question. Is the sound therapy related to inner sound? Well, the key phrase here now is inner sound, so it depends on what you mean by inner sound. I can tell you what I mean by inner sound is a yoga itself. Yeah, well, yoga then, as I'm sure you know, I've been practicing sound yoga since I was in college, so as you know, yoga means binding back, to bind back, to source. The soul and source is the, meaning of yoga, is the connecting. And the inner sound was what motivated me to get into sound yoga to begin with when I was in college, is the sacred sound current within and sound yoga. There's different forms of sound yoga, nam yoga, nad yoga, shabad yoga. There's various forms of sound yoga, and I've been involved with, since college. So even before I was as a sound therapist, I was always drawn to sound and, music back then, because I was a jazz singer in Chicago for about 10 or 12 years before moving to the West Coast in search of the proverbial record deal. But it seemed like Los Angeles was more commercial than Chicago. When I got out here, I didn't much like the music business, so I went to Vegas for a while and sang in the Riviera Hotel and other places with a 10-piece band and had some fun, met some really nice people, but I couldn't see living in the desert or Las Vegas, so I came back to LA and went into radio, and I had a radio show for 3.5 years, and while I was doing that radio show, that's how I found sound therapy. One of the guests I had 4 shows I was producing. I was playing alternative music, I was doing a talk show, and that was my favorite, Heart Touch with Wayne Perry, where I interviewed shamans and healers and channelers and anybody that I thought was legitimate and doing some worthwhile work that needed some additional exposure. And by the way, this was way before Oprah. I was before Oprah in Los Angeles doing a show like this. But, it wasn't the huge station on national TV either, or national radio. So I just did my little thing on the radio, and when I started traveling with sound therapy back in 1992 and 93, I was doing the radio show, was live on Friday nights in Los Angeles. Hey, is that Mike a pigeon, my long lost buddy I never hear from anymore? You're still in Los Angeles or back in Nashville? Good to see you here. I'm just winding this down. I was just about to hang up and get back to work when somebody asked me a good question about inner sound and light, and that's where my passion is anyway, is the metaphysical aspects of sound therapy. And that's one of the many things I love about sound therapy, is it's like you can address on any level. If you want to explore physical issues, emotional issues, mental, psychological issues, or metaphysical issues, astral issues, spiritual, it doesn't matter. It covers it all, because we live in a vibrational universe and everything is sound. And so we're exploring this. So I hope you can participate with me in my weekly workshops every Saturday. Tomorrow will be the last one at 7 p.m. as I mentioned, and beginning next week we'll be starting the whole series over again with the 9 core keys to sound healing and the associated exercises at 1 p.m. So starting next Saturday, the 27th, we'll be on at 1 p.m. And if you're interested, if you're a serious frequent seer, if you're a real frequent seer and want to enjoy sound and professionally or whatever, you can do all 10 workshop webinars and get one for free, as well as your certificate in sound healing from the Sound Therapy Center of Los Angeles. People are getting and graduating tomorrow from the current course. Tomorrow is the last for a number of people, half a dozen people or so that were in that signed up for all 10 in the last series. So this is the last workshop in this particular series. But you can still join any single workshop. You don't have to do all 10. If you just want to dip your toe in the pool and try 1 or 2, you can do the workshop that I just described. That's, I think, on the 4th of July, Detoxing the Body-Mind, which is very important to detox that energy that's stored in the body, since we're 5 to 7 years of age, when we're like little sponges before we start to armor ourselves. I'll be showing you how to release that energy, and we do that early on to clear the slate, so all the subsequent workshops after that will be more effective, because you've released that toxic energy from infancy and childhood that blocks so many people from healing appropriately in so many of these other modalities. But sound therapy is the most powerful modality there is anyway, because we're vibrational beings. We're made of sound. Our body consists of sound. The lower the frequency, the more density. Your bones and teeth are low frequency sound, as has the most density. Eliminate the word solidity from your vocabulary, because the new physics shows us there's no such thing as solid matter or solidity. It's an illusion. So take that out of your vocabulary and substitute the word density. Density, different degrees of density, is how we understand matter and life in this dimension. The lower the frequency, the more density it is. In the physical body, your bones and teeth have the most density, so that's the lowest frequency of sound in your body. That's 100% sound. And in your muscles and organs and skin and all these other things are, we can just all lump together in the interest of time. Those are higher frequency of sound, so you have a little malleability. You know, massage therapists and chiropractors and people like my buddy Mike here, you know, can work with those parts of the body because there's a little malleability. It's not as rigid as the bones and teeth. So when you're working with the muscles and tendons and ligaments, you can, you know, release scar tissue and pain and do a certain amount of body work to help that. But you're also, you know, that's a medium frequency of sound. It's a higher frequency of sound than your bones and teeth. But the fluids in the body, the liquid and fluids in your body, are the highest physical frequency of sound in the body. Because if I were to ask you what's the form or shape of your blood, I mean, how do you answer that question? I know if somebody asked me the question, I mean, I'd say the shape of my blood is determined by my skin and my skeletal structure, which is basically what it determines. Because when you're talking about fluids, you're talking about amorphous energy. It's physical, but it's amorphous. And what amorphous means is it takes on the form and the shape of the container. So, for example, let's say you have a pitcher of water in your fridge. You go to take the pitcher out of the fridge, you pour yourself a glass of water. Well, in the glass of water, that's the shape of the water, is the shape of the glass. In the pitcher, that's the shape of the water, the shape of the pitcher. So it takes the form of the container. That's what amorphous is it takes on the shape of the form. And that's the shape or how the amorphous fluids in your body operate. They're higher frequency than your skin, muscles, organs, and whatnot, but you're more than a sack of chemicals. You're more than just muscle, organs, skin, hair, and amorphous energy of the fluids and liquids in your body. You also, in addition to all those chemicals, if you were, you have an emotional body, which is connected to the astral body within. So then within the astral body is the causal body and the mental body. And the higher part of the mental, psychological body is the causal body. And that's where causation takes place. That's where God created this universe. He created it from spirit, but to manifest it into form, he had to create it from causation on the causal plane of consciousness. And all these dimensions are within your physical body. A lot of people don't understand or get the fact that the whole physical universe is in your body. You know, people, I get a kick out of these people in NASA and these politicians. They're all excited about going to Mars or doing the space probe and all this stuff. When all you got to do is sit down and meditate, and you go way beyond the sun, the moon, and the stars. You can go all the way to the astral universe. But, you know, it just takes discipline and practice, you know. But why waste your time and money with rocket ships like Richard Branson and these other people? Why go deeper into the illusion? It's so insane, you know. You're just going deeper into the illusion. Like Jamie inferred earlier, you know, the inner sound and light is the real reality. That's what's real, is the inner sacred sound current that's within you. And the real reality of sound, light, and love. That's all that really exists. We're experiencing the illusion of separation and individuation. But there's really one beloved and one love and one soul and one entity that we're all a part of. And it's just difficult to understand from this dimension. So we can't put the cart before the horse. It's best to, you know, to understand as much as we can about this dimension and put things in the proper order. And if you use your sound every day and you meditate every day, you're literally building your treasure in heaven, as the old cliche goes, you know. building your treasure in heaven. Well, it's the truth. It's the only thing that goes with you. Once it's your time to make your transition from this dimension, you can't take your body with you. You can't take your money with you, or your house, or even your family. That's why, in the Bible, Jesus said in St. Matthew, I don't often quote scripture or religion because it's, all those answers are within. But Jesus said in St. Matthew, you call me a healer. I don't come to heal you. I come with a sword. I come with a sword to separate mother from daughter, father from son, husband from wife. Now, I don't know. I grew up in a Christian household here in Chicago, Illinois, but I don't even know what that's, how people are interpreting it in the churches and in religious philosophy, and how do they explain that? I don't know. I never got the answers. That's why I went into yoga and sound yoga when I was in college, because I got all the answers to my questions from, some from Buddhism, some from Hinduism, but most of them came from the sacred sound current and the study of the path of the masters and the path of sound yoga. That's what answered all my questions and gave me the motivation to go within and to meditate, as I've been doing for more years than I care to remember. I'm just grateful this is my last incarnation. I'm just trying to take as many people home with me as I can before I leave this dark, oppressive place. We can focus on the glass being half empty or half full. I always look at it as half full because it's a perfect creation. I'm not. I don't have this allegiance to any political figures or political parties or dictators or anything like that. I know who's really in control, and that's Spirit, God. And I'm happy about that because I can see everything unfolding perfectly. It might look a bit insane out there right now to a lot of people that don't understand the karmic shifts that are going on, but that's in part because they don't understand the three types of karma. Maybe one day I'll do a webinar, a video on the three types of karma, or if you study in Sanskrit, you've got Sinchit karma, which is the stored karma that you carry. Then you've got Pralabdha karma, which is fate karma, which shapes your future destiny that comes out of the stored karma of your Sinchit karma. And then out of the Pralabdha karma, the third form of karma is called Kriyaman karma. These are Sanskrit or Hindi words. If there were American words, I'd use them, but I don't know of any. But the Kriyaman karma is the new karma that we create. We don't have as much free will as we think we have. All the choices that we make, whether it's choices of work or relationship or whatever, or coffee, tea, or milk, those choices are conditioned from all our past choices and past lives, and those decisions have pretty much been made for us, unless we get on our own way and we distort the decision and make a different decision. It doesn't even matter that much, because sooner or later we're going to come around to making the right decision, because our karmas move us in a particular direction. But anyway, I don't have time to do a karmic discussion here. I just wanted to answer any questions that were hanging. And let's see, what is this other question? King James Hotmail initiate of Charan Singh 50. James, you're initiate of Charan Singh? That's interesting, because that was my spiritual teacher as well. I'm an initiate as well. So we're on the same page there. So yeah, so that's what we're talking about, the inner overtone, the inner sacred sound current, whatever you call it, the Shabad, the sacred sound within. That's what is within every human being and gives us life. And, and our job here, a real purpose here, if we want to make the best use of it, is to go within in meditation and connect to that sound current, which will take us home. That's the way we got down into this dimension, as we came in on the sound current, as our karma dictated. We had good enough karma to come up through the, as they call in India, the 84 lakh species, which are really 84 million life forms of species that we've evolved through. And we should have tremendous gratitude and appreciation for having this physical form of the human body, because that's what keeps us on track, and that's what keeps us, here in this dimension until it's time to complete our karma and go home to our true home. So, it's all about sound, it's all about light, and it's all about love. That's it. and the soul has the capacity to see light independent of physical eyes. We think of light and sound with our eyes and ears because we think in terms of the body. But when you go deep enough into your meditation and start operating from a soul level, the soul can actually see light. And that's referred to as the Nirat. The Nirat, spelled N-I-R-A-T, if you want to know how it's spelled. So the Nirat is the soul's capacity to see light independent of a body or anything else. It's one of the three characteristics of the soul. Soul only has three characteristics. The first characteristic is to see light and to emanate light. The soul is light, it emanates light, and it perceives light through the Nirat, which is the soul's capacity to perceive light. Now, if there was an English word, an American word, I would use it. But I don't know of one, so all I got here is the Nirat. And so that's what I've learned in, sound yoga over the many years since I was in college. Okay, so the soul also has the capacity to hear sound independent of the body or the ears. And so the capacity of the soul to hear sound is referred to as the Surat. And so the Surat is the Sanskrit or Hindi word for the soul's capacity to perceive sound. And Surat is spelled S-U-R-A-T, Surat. And so the sound yoga that I was referring to, that I didn't want to get into the details of it, but since I've gone this far, I might as well share with you, that's called Surat Shabad Yoga. So Surat is spelled S-U-R-A-T, Shabad is spelled S-H-A-B-D, and yoga, I'm sure you know, Y-O-G-A. So Surat Shabad Yoga is the purest form of yoga that I know of, because it deals directly with the sound current. It's not about physical positions or contortions for physical yoga. It's not Kundalini yoga. It's the highest form of spiritual yoga and connecting to the inner sound current within and riding that current home. I've got a song on one of my music CDs or downloads. Which one is it now? Enchantment or Remember the Future? Enchantment. Yeah, there's a track called Nada Par Brahma, which is all about the sound current, and it's comprised of Sanskrit words that I don't read Sanskrit or Hindi, but I found words through an Indian friend of mine that I got the words that mean devotion, love, sound, sacred, spirit, all the divine words that have very high intention behind it. I created a chant not for the lyrical meaning of what the words are, but the sound of the words. The sound of words like shabadoon, shabadoon, shabadoon. I just love the sound of shabadoon, doom, doom, shabadoon, doom, doom. So, check out Enchantment sometime if you like, my second vibrational healing CD. It's the one that I perform in concert when I do sound healing concerts because it's the most musical oriented. It has a lot of rhythms and percussion sounds, all of which I create vocally. There's no instruments on any of my music albums. I do all the percussion, drums, chords, bass, everything vocally. I'm not trying to out Bobby McFerrin or anything like that. I love Bobby and Al Jarreau. These are singers that were doing what I was doing in Chicago, 30 years ago. So I have a lot of respect for them. And it was just through that, my interest in music, my interest in sound as a jazz singer, creating various sounds with the voice, that event first led me into sound yoga and the sound current, and been a practicing meditator for all these years since college. And then 28 years ago, it led me into sound therapy and vibrational healing from one of the guests that I had on my radio show, and then subsequently on my TV show in Los Angeles. My radio show, Heart Touch with Wayne Perry, was on for 3.5 years on KCLA and KLAS in Los Angeles. But then I started traveling with my sound therapy work and workshops and keynote speaking. I couldn't keep up a live show. So I took it to TV, and I was on cable television where I could record the shows in advance, and I could record the shows and put it in the can and schedule it, and then hit the road. I could record 2-3 shows at a time, and I didn't have to do them live. And so I was on cable television for 13 years, from, 1993 maybe till 2006, something like that. Anyway, I know it was 13 years. I'm not the greatest with math sometimes, but anyway, so it was a lot of fun. I was just trying to be of service to people that are a bit agoraphobic and not leaving their house too much and looking for something on the media or TV. And I would give them exercises, toning exercises and meditation exercises, or whatever I could support them with to help them on their journey. But anyway, that was then, and now I find myself, I never know where Spirit and the great Master within will guide me to, but after being led to every major city in the United States where I've done workshops over the last 25 years, the last three years or so, I've been spending a lot of time in Taiwan, Hong Kong, Shanghai, Shenzhen, because the people there are really ready and very open-minded and open-hearted, and I want to be there for them. I just hope the American people can wake up and catch up with them. You know, they are in some parts of the country. I mean, if I go to Chicago or New York or, you know, Atlanta or Austin, Texas, usually there's, you know, a waiting list. You know, there's 100 to 200 people there. But here in Los Angeles, it's strange. People have too many choices. I never know. Sometimes 30 or 40 people will show up to my event. Sometimes it's only 3 or 4. It's like you're never a star in your hometown. So that's why I travel. I love spreading the word and connecting with my brothers and sisters around the world. And lately, in fact, I should be in Taiwan right now, usually in the spring. I'm in Taiwan doing workshops. In fact, last year I was up in Yangming Mountain in Taiwan. They have a beautiful mountain right almost inside the city. I think it's still within the city limits of Taipei. And it's a beautiful place to do a workshop. And I did my sound relationship workshop, which we did a couple of weeks ago in the webinar workshops every Saturday. I did my sound relationship workshop, and my business partner in Taiwan, who translated my book, Sound Medicine, into Chinese, and now they can't use the word medicine because of the laws over there, so they had to go back to my original title, which was Overtoning, you know, The Secrets to Healing with Sound and Toning, which I have available on a download and CDs on my website, but they had to change the name of the book, so it looks different. It's just got a white cover and small print, but it seems to be selling off the shelves there pretty well because the people are really recognizing the power of sound and meditation and gravitating towards this. And I miss them. I'm sorry I couldn't come and see them this past April, as I usually do in the springtime. In fact, now, tomorrow, it's going to be summer. We're ending spring, and we have to postpone my Taiwan trip till next year. Even my Hong Kong trip we haven't set. Normally I do Hong Kong and Shanghai in the fall, in October, September, October, but we have to postpone that too. There's been a lot of rioting, a lot of college students and people rebelling against the communist government in China. You know, we think we have it tough with this kind of dictator-type president that we have here that doesn't seem to understand anything about consciousness. And but, you know, we're very blessed compared to the way people have it in third world countries. I've been to some third world countries with my work, like in Egypt, and cities there where people are living on dirt floors and living in poverty, similar to, you know, places in India and other parts of the world. We don't know how good we have it. I remember in Cairo there were young guys with machine guns on every corner. I mean, they couldn't have been more than 17 or 18 years old, these soldiers, with machine guns. Now, if there was some kind of rioting or something going on in the crowded streets of Cairo, how much maturity do you think is within a 17-year-old with a Tommy gun, a machine gun? I shudder at the thought of it, you know. I mean, but this is how life is in third world countries. It's not unusual to go down a street and see somebody hanging from a light pole or from a tree or something. You know, they just string people up of any persuasion, any age, gender, race, you know, in some of these third world countries if you don't follow their belief systems. So, you know, we should count our blessings here. It's sure things aren't right. We need to be righteous and push for more truth in this country and really honor spirit and honor people and literally do the right thing. But at the same time, we should be very grateful for these sacred bodies that we have that carry the self around, the real self, the real spiritual self, and be grateful for just being alive and have evolving to this state of humanity. It's only the human body has all 5 frequencies activated in the human body. So we should really be grateful for it and take advantage of it, because the human body has 5 active frequencies. So the worst thing you can do karmically, talking about karma, the worst karma you could create is taking the life of another human being. You know, the karma is just going to really keep you on the wheel of transmigration of the soul for such a long time, you know, and if you take the life of another human being. But, you know, maybe we're not out there, you and I, taking lives in the street, but when you're taking the lives of animals, warm-blooded animals, it's the next worst karma, because you're interfering with 4 frequencies of life. 4 frequencies of life. We're no different really from animals except for one frequency, and that one frequency is the frequency that gives us the etheric energy to have God consciousness. That's the only difference between us and animals. You know, whether it's dogs and cats or lions and tigers and bears or whatever you want to think of, those animals we're no different from. We seek shelter, they seek shelter. We eat and defecate, they eat and defecate. We seek for reproduction, and they do reproduction. I mean, we're animals just like them, but the difference is we've reached what they refer to as the top of creation as humans. At the top of creation, what that means literally is we have the capacity to have God realization. You don't have to wait to go to heaven or hell or something like that. In fact, if you want to know, heaven and hell are on the astral plane. So we're not even as high as heaven and hell. We're below here on the earth plane. We're below heaven and hell. So heaven and hell are a place that we go to between lifetimes depending on our karmas. So if you created good karmas, you can enjoy heaven for a time on the astral plane until you come down for your next incarnation. Or if you were not such a good person, and you might have to experience the pain of hell on the astral plane until your next incarnation. So, you know, people don't seem to put things into perspective, but this is the truth as I know it, and you can believe what you want to believe. We have the so-called free will to make our own choices. I mean, it's not as free as we think it is, but, you know, the Kriyaman karma is the only portion that's really free, gives us free choice, but most of our decisions are kind of pre-made on our subconscious level anyway. But anyway, moving away from that, I'm just saying that when we take the life, you know, and are carnivores, obviously we weren't meant to be carnivores. We don't have incisors, long incisors like wolves and animals, wild animals do, nor do we have the colon, the extended colon that they have, you know, that meat putrefies in the colon. So it's obvious for people that are honest enough with themselves and not rationalizing the truth that we shouldn't be killing and eating, consuming animals. It's not healthy. In fact, it's probably the source of most diseases like cancer and whatnot. But I'm not going to get into a big dialogue about nutrition here. I just want to point out that this is all karma. So, you know, you're just taking you're not only taking the life of animals, but you're interfering with 4 of the 5 frequencies of life. And so next on the evolutionary scale, by the way, is fish and fowl. Fish and fowl have 3 active frequencies. 2 frequencies are dormant. And so, you know, maybe it's slightly better, you know, than taking the life of animals, but it's still a tremendous amount of karma that weighs us down, so that we're not going to transcend, we're not going to get off the cycle of the transmigration of the soul. We're not going to get off the wheel of birth and death as long as we're, you know, consuming these living beings. And so fish and fowl is the next karmic price. Then after fish and fowl, we have, after fish and fowl, reptiles and insects. Reptiles and insects have only 2 active frequencies. 3 frequencies are dormant. And so, again, it's a little bit less, down the scale of karma. It's less karma, but it's still a significant amount of karma that's gonna keep you here. It's not gonna enable you to elevate your consciousness inward and upward through meditation, which is the true key. And so, as you begin to recognize this and have enough inner experience to understand how to separate the wheat from the chaff and take responsibility for the karma that you're creating. And if you want to get out of this wheel of birth and death, some people are happy here. They don't want to go anywhere. They're looking forward to their next incarnation. And hey, more power to them if that's their path. I don't judge anybody. We're all doing as our karma dictates. And the other thing is all these, PETA people, which I support in a lot of ways, protecting, the preservation of animals, and but they get a little judgmental sometimes, and they talk about, oh, you're wearing a leather belt or leather shoes, and you're killing, and you shouldn't be killing, but what they miss is we're in the plane of killing. The third dimensional plane is the plane of killing. You can't get away with not killing. You walk down the street, you're killing little insects and ants and little beings. You drink a glass of water and you're killing amoeba and paramecium that are in the water. These are little one-celled animals that have karma. They have souls. They have karma. People think that, because they're small or invisible to the eye, it's not, there's no sin involved, there's no karma involved, or however they want to look at it. The fact is, it's the law of action and reaction, cause and effect. Karma is not something that's good or bad. That's just a label we put on it based upon our shallow judgments and shallow consciousness. Karma is just cause and effect. From a religious sense, or in the Bible it says, as ye sow, so shall ye reap. In other scriptures it says the same thing and with different words. But however you want to look at it, it's just it's just karma. And you're going to be killing. Accept the fact and own that you're a killer as long as you're living on this dimension. But what about it? Can you get out of it? Can you release yourself from this karma of killing? Yes, you can. If you subsist on the lowest amount of karma possible, if you use your conscious free will to lead a moral life, to be an honest person, and you consume life on the lowest level possible, which is plant life. Plant life only has one frequency, and that frequency translates to water. And so if you can subsist on plant food, plant life, you're still killing, you're still creating karma, but it's so small, it's such a small amount of karma that you can literally burn it off with your meditation. So if you meditate every day and you do your sound work, you're spiraling inward and upward. And with patience and devotion and humility, you'll eventually reach your goal, because then the onus is on the Lord, the onus is on Spirit, the onus is on God, and and He or she is in perfect control. So we have to have trust and love, and I have complete trust and love that it's not going to force me to come back into this oppressive world again. I'm may not be the best disciple in the world, but I'm intent on doing and loving to the max and doing what I can while I'm here. And I have faith that I'm going to be lifted up the bosom of the Lord. And if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. I'm just doing the best I can, be of service. And so if you need any support, I'm always here. My phone number and my email, as I mentioned earlier, is always on my website, wayneperry.com. I try to remain accessible. I had to take the address off because I'd have people coming over here in West Hollywood, California, without an appointment, and I can't have that. I can't be interrupted from my sessions with people or my meditation, but I still have my phone number and email on the website, wayneperry.com, and you can, email me or phone me anytime. If I'm not with a client, I'm happy to talk with you. I try to keep myself as accessible as possible. I actually prefer the phone calls because I get so many emails. I get over 100 emails a day from all over the world, and I just don't have time to respond to all of them. Plus, I don't really type, so I wrote my book with voice recognition software, so I didn't have to type it. I spoke it into a microphone. That's how I wrote my book, Sound Medicine. And so typing out emails is just really cumbersome for me. You know, if it's something important and I find your email, I will respond to it. But the safest bet is to give me a call, leave me a voicemail or a call, and I will always get back to you. I always return my calls. I try to return my emails, but I can't always find all the emails that I have to dig through all the spams. So, but at least I'm there, I'm available, and I'm accessible. So by phone or email, whatever, WaynePerry.com. And if you don't have my book, Sound Medicine, you're really missing a beat, because you can learn a lot from this book. I'll just show it to you if you're not familiar with it. That's the book, Sound Medicine. And you know, that was originally self-published as Overtoning, and then it was picked up by a East Coast publisher, and they changed the title to Sound Medicine, which I like. It's a good title, I think. But I still prefer my old artwork on Overtoning. But anyway, you can get it on my website, and I greatly appreciate it if you purchase the book on my website rather than the corporate giants that are trying to change the world and run things. Don't order from the big A, please. You're just contributing to the problem and putting money into the billionaires' pockets that are behind a lot of the stuff that's going on in the world. Support your local sound healers, your local craftsmen, people that are working hard in their businesses, and support those people. If you like their work, support them by buying their tools, whatever, if it's, you know, tuning forks or books or recordings or whatever it is. They will appreciate it if you spend an extra $1 or $2. Yeah, you can save $2 if you order from the big corporations, because they can afford to reduce their prices to try to con you out of your dollars. But the truth is, you're just supporting, you know, it's just like supporting Big Pharma and the Big A and all the other big companies, like, you know, well, I didn't want to mention names here. So it's up to you. It's your choice. But anyway, if you're interested in sound medicine, it's on my website, WaynePerry.com/products. You can go to the products page. I have my sound healing music, 4 CDs or 4 downloads, and the sound healing music. It's all done with vocal harmonics, no instruments. There's 4 instructional CDs, The Secrets to Healing with Sound and Toning. You can get them in CD or downloads. Nowadays, people mostly just do the downloads. They're cheaper, and it's easier to just download to your phone instead of having to pay shipping and handling. But whatever. And then there's sound therapy tones that I use with my people with chronic illnesses, and do a diagnostic brain voice sound analysis, which I do by phone now all over the world. I'm on the phone at all hours working with people in Indonesia and Japan and China and Europe. You don't, doesn't matter what time you call. Sometimes I'm sleeping in the daytime, sometimes in the evening. I'm just here being of service whenever I can. I just set my alarm if I have an appointment with somebody. I get a nap here and a nap there, but in any event, again, my website is my name, Wayne Perry. So it's WaynePerry.com. Very simple. My email is Wayne@WaynePerry.com. That's simple as well. You know, website WaynePerry.com, email Wayne@WaynePerry.com. And there's loads of information you can learn. There's free to view videos. As I mentioned earlier, when I thought I was saying goodbye, and then I got into this big long conversation. But there's about 15 videos that I've done. Some are Facebook Live videos like this. Some are from conferences. Some are from TV shows. There's one from CNN that featured me back in 1996. I was on internationally. They did like a 20-minute feature on me and my work back in '96. Nobody remembers because nobody was into sound therapy. Nobody knew what it was. So they probably changed the channel or something. I don't know. But I'm not going anywhere until it's my time to make the transition. You know, I'm still here. I'll be doing this sound healing harmonic work as long as I'm on 2 legs here. And being of service as best I can. So give me a call sometime if you have any questions about anything. All your questions will probably get answered from Sound Medicine if you get the book. And there's 48 exercises in the book as well, which people don't realize. It'll teach you a lot. Like I said, I looked for years for a book that taught you sound healing, and I couldn't find it. I mean, there's some good books on sound, The Power of Sound and Healing Sounds and the Mozart Effect and all these things that, have some good information, but they don't teach you sound healing. So that's why I spent 10 years researching and writing and formatting and, like I said, using voice recognition software to complete Sound Medicine. And, well, at that time it was Overtoning, and it was published independently. And then it was picked up and is available now as Sound Medicine on the website. So anyway, that's enough for my plugs for my products. These are just tools. Really, you're the instrument, and to use. There's a lot of fear around the fifth chakra for people, and they, I guess we get compared to professionals and to older people when we're kids, and we have a lot of self-consciousness and fear around the voice and the fifth chakra. But it's easy to get over if you use the exercises and principles in my book Sound Medicine or in my workshops. And like I said, until August 29th, my webinar workshops, 3-hour $95 workshop, is only $33. It's like about 60% off the regular price, just temporarily until August 29th. Then it goes back to the regular price. It's just to help people out, to educate you. It's all doable. There's nothing academic in the book Sound Medicine or in my webinar workshops. It's all easy to understand. It's not academic material and principles. It's all easy to understand principles like the 9 core keys to sound healing and harmonics, how to detoxify the body-mind, and the ultimate healing instrument sitting right under your nose, the human voice, and sound relationships. I do a sound relationship workshop so you can learn the principles of what chemistry is. It's all vibrational. The chemistry we feel with other people, while we're drawn by some people, repelled by others, that has to do with our frequency pattern that's in our brainwaves. And we can alter it by using sound therapy and working with our personal sounds. So, in any event, I got to take off here, and I don't think I've done a workshop this long, or a live video. I don't know if we're pushing 2 hours here or what, but I was just going to give you a little reminder, heads up for tomorrow. So I'll be doing another little free thing at 6 o'clock tomorrow, a little free Facebook Live, just as an introduction and a reminder about the weekly workshop webinars. And I'll be doing that until around 6:30 or 6:40 or so, and then I have to prepare for the workshop at 7 p.m. And then that's my week. Then I'll be doing private sessions on the phone all week and until the 27th, when I start the 1 p.m. Workshops, which will start with the 9 core keys to sound healing. So thanks for joining me, you guys, and I appreciate your attention. And most of the people have bailed out by now, probably fell asleep, or especially if they're on the East Coast. I don't know where your remaining people are located, but I'm in Los Angeles, and it's about 11 p.m. here now on Friday night, and I'm going to take leave of your senses. So I hope to connect with you again. If not tomorrow, maybe at some future Saturday or some future Facebook Live, or maybe on the telephone if you call in. So thanks again, and until we touch again, remember, if the eyes are the windows to the soul, the voice is surely the door to the heart. And love in your heart wasn't put there to stay. Love isn't love till you give it away. Namaste and Radha Swami. Love you, I.